Hello, I am Payal Raina, the founder of the Fintech Marketing. Welcome to Learning with Marketing Leaders, a series of one-on-one conversation with our advisory board members who are leading minds and possesses the wealth of knowledge and information within technology, finance, in the marketing B2B world. Today, I'm joined by Janet Du Chenne, an Editorial Director for Deutsche Bank Corporate Bank's division and an advisory board member for the Fintech B2B Marketing. Thanks, Janet, for joining us today. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Amazing. Janet, you had a very exciting career journey. So you went on being for a journalist for a number of years for several trade magazines, and now you are managing editorial director role at Deutsche Bank. So tell me more about how did you make a transition a successful one?
Well, this question takes me to 2015, when I first started having conversations with marketing professionals at financial and technology companies, mostly about what makes a journalist good for a content role. And I kind of remember thinking to myself, I was a firm believer at that time in really helping these organizations, believing that they had a challenge in engaging their audiences to get their message across. So some of those challenges that I identified at the time were to do with regulation. It could be perception since financial crisis, for example. And also there were a couple of internal challenges. For example, being in these large organizations, some of them might have gotten used to using a lot of jargon in the way they communicate, and perhaps getting lost in that and believing that an internal message is what an external audience wants to hear. So there was that challenge. And at the same time, the technology companies were also offering similar services as banks, but just in a quicker and more efficient manner. So those were the key challenges, I thought. And where I came in, I define myself as a passionate storyteller. Now, I enjoy making connections between wider macro themes and trends and bridging that with some of the financial topics and trends relevant to that sector. So the link that I found was that if I could do that in-house, I would continue to be able to help organizations, perhaps one internally, and be able to continue delivering content to engage audiences. So Flow was a great fit there for me and my passions. And when I joined, it was the first issue that was getting published around the same time, and there was very much an alignment there, and where I could help. So if you look at Flow, it's very unique in its field. So it tells the story, it engages audiences, but it tells the story from the client's perspective, interviewing a lot of clients about the various challenges that they're encountering. And it's very light on product push. So you won't have many sort of in-house internal voices in the magazine, but very much a lot of clients participating in that. So it tells that so what factor. So if a client is picking up a copy of the magazine and would expect to see something in there for them, or at least have content answer very earlier on, so what, why should I be interested in reading this? Or actually, I read something there and I never thought about that kind of perspective. Perhaps I should look at what's behind this content and the person behind this content, and try and make that subtle connection. So that's what makes Flow unique in its field. And I think that's paid off.
That's really great, and I'm glad things have been kind of transitioned so nicely, because I think one thing you mentioned was so what factor, and I am totally with you. That is so important and critical, especially when you're trying to engage with your audience and your customers. So rather than being the product push, kind of keeping it quite relevant and focused for them. So that's absolutely great. Now, you mentioned 2015, and that's like 5 years you have been in the role now. So, Janet, from your perspective, what has changed in content marketing during the last 5 years? And how do you think it has adapted to the need of financial and technology businesses and its audience?
Wow, so a lot has changed, especially when you see how audiences consume content and get their content. There are just so many channels. So let's say 5 years ago, there was content within financial and technology companies that claimed to be multi-channel, where you had some printed content and an online presence kind of backing that up, and with some social media on the side sort of supporting that when it gets published. Now, because of the access to all these digital tools, the learners, the audience rather, would expect to use all these different touch points, and the way that they're consuming content has changed. So they have an idea exactly how much time they have to spend finding something and what they want to. So given lives are just incredibly busy nowadays, that I think that's very much focused the audience on what they want and where to go about looking for it and how long to spend time finding it. So I think that's one of the areas where content marketers in financial and technology companies have adapted. They've adapted to those needs and offering those multiple touch points, so that with the aim of delivering quicker, short form content to match those needs and exactly what audiences are looking for. So it could be something like a podcast, where in 2 minutes the audience would be able to get what they need, and perhaps if they wanted more, they could read further through a white paper or a long form article if they have the time to do so. So it's adapting that way and using all of those channels in union to really deliver that content, and they have to work as one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you made a really good point there. It's about the union, it's about the consistency, it's about providing that consistent omni-channel experience depending upon the needs of your audience. So the 2 minutes, or it could be a long, a 20 minutes video to a print file. So I think that's great. Would you mind sharing any examples with our viewers about any successful types of content that has worked well in your role?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I just thought of a statistic that I read as you were asking me this question, and I read that the World Media Group, they do an annual survey of key trends, and their survey last year, towards the end of last year, which is November time, they interviewed about 260 professionals, marketing professionals within financial and technology companies, to name a few. And about 85% of those professionals had responsibility for content marketing. So for me, what was interesting is a fifth of those surveyed found that content has to align with the brand with a particular trend that makes a successful content marketing strategy. So it was kind of music to my ears, because Flow, that's exactly what the magazine does. It bridges the gap between a wider trend that is occurring in the market that impacts a financial and technology company, and makes those connections, subtle connections, with a particular solution that that company is prepared to offer, and to spend time listening to what the audience wants, and spending time to create that empathy with the audience. So if I look at Flow, you know, we have the print magazine, and then that's supported by the online channel, which is db.com/flow, and all of those articles that appear in the print magazine will also get published online. Around that, you have the social media posts of each individual article, taking snippets from those articles and teasing people in with certain hashtags or quotes, for example. But also, since podcasts have picked up quite considerably, become quite a nice way for people to absorb content in a quick format, we use the podcast channel to also tease people in before a feature gets published. So to provide an example, I wrote something about GDP growth in India, and the ambitions that the government has to make it a $50 trillion, pardon me, a $5 trillion economy within a few days' time. So one example is an article that I wrote for the H1 issue of Flow this year, where I'd interviewed an asset management company, but the actual story was about India's ambition to become a $5 trillion economy within a few years' time. So I'd interviewed the CEO of an asset management company about his thoughts and how he plans to capitalize on that growth. And from that, created a short podcast that was published 2 months before the printed article came out. So that kind of teed up people before, and it was really telling the story. It felt in situ, so real time. So there he was in his office, and there I was in London, and we're having this conversation over the phone, and the podcast was just gave that realistic edge because it was a phone conversation. So it was building that sort of that sort of in situ moment where the questions I had were really delving into what it's like actually tapping into the mutual fund market and the potential that companies have there. So it's quite an exciting journey, and the podcast really allows for that format of being in situ and feeling that empathy and kind of delivering it to your audiences. And then that was teeing them up to sign up to Flow to register for the print issue. So worked quite well.
That's interesting, because that probably shows a greater engagement rate from your audience, given now you are providing them the content in a more easily and digestible format, and which is quite succinct and relevant for them. So, and especially in this COVID time, as we all know from past 5 months, we all have been, under lockdown, businesses have been asking their employees to work from home. So has that kind of, Janet, changed your day-to-day role, or has it, how has the pandemic impacted in terms of how you were working, or your team, you guys have been working before and now? Would you like to share some of your kind of changes with the viewers about, how the role has been changed?
Sure. I mean, it's things have completely changed since going into a lockdown, which we have here in the UK in March, and as have a lot of other places. We all work from home. Let's say about 90%, perhaps even more back then, of the workforce went into a work from home scenario. And I remember there was lots of uncertainty and trying to work out how to fulfill this role and what we could do to really help and engage audiences, given that, for example, it wasn't really possible for a salesperson to go and visit a client because of the lockdown situation. So face-to-face meetings were off the cards, and other types of touch points where, for example, businesses, financial and technology companies thrive on seeing clients, whether at conferences or in meetings, was no longer happening. So what we really had to think about was, okay, so given that sort of disconnect and the uncertainty, how do we make things just a bit better and inform through content, because I think in informing and with engaging content that builds trust with an audience is very crucial. Perhaps even more because you're not seeing each other in the same room. So what can we do as a marketing role? So we significantly ramped up the content delivery in the last 5 months. So a series of articles going out every week. I've written sort of more articles when I compare this to this time this year to this time last year. So there's also a COVID dossier section on the website where we create articles driven by the Deutsche Bank research team that contain facts and figures and engaging numbers. So again, bridging those macro trends with some analysis, some useful, informative analysis for readers that they can appreciate, take away, and say, okay, well, I've read this, and thank you for this piece of content, and it's just keeping us informed during this time. And I think you build that trust factor through content that's well researched and engaging, and has a good quality research team behind it. So that's one thing that's really changed significantly in the last 5 months. Its delivery and output has increased, and just being there and delivering, and that the sales team can also utilize that. So the workings, we very much work together in terms of deciding, okay, what are we messaging? What types of articles do we need? What's going to help you, the sales team, to engage with your clients in a virtual construct or digital construct?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially looking at the trust factor, which you just mentioned, is it has been absolutely key for marketers to think about how they can build that trust factors. And I think what you just shared in terms of your insights about how Deutsche Bank and your approach to build those trust factors with your customers have been absolutely essential, especially in this time where people are settling into the new normal environment. They're working from home. They are homeschooling their kids. So it has been very difficult, challenging time. So having that trust from your brand, who understands your needs and provides you the content in the shape, form, timing when you need it. It's quite critical, especially in this time. Now, one thing you did mention, Janet, about digital content, and yes, we all have been seeing quite a lot of digital content. All the companies are, have shifted their, most of them have shifted their marketing strategy towards digital side, and doing lots of podcasts, webinars, virtual events, and so on and so forth. So how do you see this all kind of evolving and becoming as a part of firms' long-term content strategy? Do you think it's here to stay, or is it just kind of a fad and it's going to disappear? So yeah, would love to get your views on that.
That's a really good question, and it reminds me that there was a stat that I saw by a company called Acast, which looked at the number of podcasts that we've seen since, and they took it from April, where they said there was a 49% month-on-month increase in the number of podcasts within the financial and technology space generally. That's month-on-month of new podcasts since April this year. So definitely it's helped. It's one of those formats that have enabled us to engage and be there for clients and the industry, and deliver informative content. so I think definitely here to stay. And going forward, I think while there has been a lot of podcasts, what it's actually for me, what that's done is that we've seen it as an effective way to generate leads, but and just connect with clients. But I think for me going forward, what it's also done is given access editorial marketers or content marketers within financial and technology firms with such an insight into people's lives. We've seen digital content, but especially podcasts and webinars and Zoom calls like this. We've got that insight into day-to-day lives. We're talking to each other. I'm in my living room. We're effectively in each other's homes, and I think that's an incredible insight to have. I was interviewing the chief investor relations officer at a blue chip company the other day, and his daughter came into the room. She needed help with their homework and needed to do some exercise. So I think it's made us even a bit more savvy in terms of empathy and finding what people's everyday lives, their digital tools, and how quickly they need to react to things, to challenges, how they do that through technology, for example. So I think we can really use that to really get and evolve a clearer message when lockdown ends. Which it has done here, and that we get back to a kind of a new normal. So right now we're messaging about a lot of things, but when we come out of that, we can just fine tune that a bit and be clearer about what we really want to say with our podcasts and with our webinars.
Mm-hmm. No, true. Yes, it does give us that bit more insights and trying to be more empathetic. And you're right, empathy is quite key, especially during these difficult, challenging times, as we're all trying to get adjusted to this new environment. And I think also, Janet, perhaps one thing you mentioned was being close to your customers and being, understanding your customers. So you're probably getting to see, with an example you just shared where the daughter kind of came in, was that you are now seeing a different view of your customers. So they are not just a professional buyer now, but you're seeing more a human, them as a dad or as a mum. So you're kind of getting, in a way, a bit more closer to your client, even though technology, can't bridge that gap as a one-on-one person is, but probably it's kind of giving that angle of being more closer and kind of knowing them more as a human being, as a person, not just as a customer, but more as a mom or a dad. So
and you're seeing how much you're seeing how much time they actually have in the wider scheme of things, because we might be used to seeing them as a professional, or listening to a podcast on a train on the way to work, whereas that might not be possible now. So you kind of see where you slot in with your content and exactly how much time people have to read a piece of content and inform how long yours should be. Should a podcast be about 2 minutes, or an article, it should be, let's say, a 1 or 2 minute read, which some analysis that we did reflecting that, where it was the average time spent on a page is around 2 minutes. So you're less you're less inclined to write a very long feature, but do rather snippet of that, where there's time for that person, that professional, to read more at a later time.
No, absolutely. No, totally. So, Janet, I know we talked about, your views about the content marketing, how it has changed in the last 5 years, how it has changed in the last 5 months. Now, that kind of brings to me a question about, do you see a different future for it now than you might have done it a year ago? So if I would have asked you this question 1 year ago, how would you have kind of perceived this as a different future from where it is now?
So I think, yes, content has a different future now. If I look at where we started, even this year when we went into lockdown, we were the content marketing function within financial companies and technology companies was very much strategy. You would meet the business at the beginning of the year, decide your plan for the year, and then go about executing and writing and delivering articles. Did something completely upended that, and that was COVID-19. So in every single way, it's I ask myself this question a lot in just even in day-to-day life, is what has the pandemic taught us about preparing for the unexpected. And it's all about your mobility to react to change and to challenges. And it's made us more tactical, and just a bit more flexible, but also thinking about what resources you could use within your multi-channel arsenal to deliver that content in an engaging way, and just be ready to sort of switch things around, and customize where you might need to. So and the business has appreciated that. There's a lot more engagement when we're all kind of working from home, but we're all very much in touch through virtual channels at work. So there's a lot of engagement between sales, product, and the marketing teams, and a real working together now. There's that's I've really noticed that a lot more, and I think that value that content marketers have shown, content marketers within financial companies or technology companies, it's really proven itself in the business. But I think going forward, it's what things will look like in the new normal, what business will look like, and how business adapt to challenges. Marketing will have a role to play in writing about that and delivering content that talks about those challenges from the client's perspective, and delivering that to the audiences to help them and inform them about what others are doing as we try and prepare for what will probably be an uncertain time as we come out of this crisis.
Indeed. So finally, my final question is, so what would be your key piece of advice for the content marketers working in financial and technology space, especially where there's so much content out there already, there's so much noise, and you are increasingly competing for audience's attention. So it is very challenging and tough job for content marketers out there. So what would be your key advice for them?
Sure. So I think we some will be let's say as always, pandemic or no pandemic. I think knowing your audience is still very crucial. Knowing them better as we've gotten to know them, quite, I think, even slightly more intimately through different calls and FaceTime calls in each other's houses, is even more better. And as I go back to what I was saying about that insight, it's using that insight in the best way that you can to deliver your strategy. So this has really opened up our eyes, and what can we learn from that when we go forward. Linked to that is the sort of that should enable you to deliver a clearer message about what you want to say as you coming into the new normal. And if you don't think that let's say a webinar or a podcast is the way to do that, then maybe don't do it. Or if you might find a white paper or a guide is the best way to do that. So it's lockdown has also helped us to deliver a much clearer message that will inform future future strategies, I believe. Then it's always the authenticity factor is quite a key one for me. So when I started doing more podcasts in lockdown, I found I really sort of came into my own, and I didn't have the AV team behind me, but I was sort of doing it on my phone, and it helped quite a lot. So that authenticity factor is sort of making sure that as a host you're in situ, and you establish this connection with your interviewee. Sometimes you can have an interviewee or two interviewees, but I think that choice of host is quite important, and who you interview is really important too. But I think your consistency at podcast delivery is also important. So keep going, keep doing it, and you'll build up this network of people to interview. I mean, I read there was a webinar hosted by a company, Vested, last week, and they one of the stats that came out was there was a podcaster named Joe. He did about 1,000 podcasts before he finally got to who he wanted on his podcast, which was Elon Musk. So it's just keep going, that you need that regularity of your podcasts, and be in situ to deliver that message. And finally I would say, that sort of that sort of customization, where as a storyteller, you're sort of keeping your ear to the ground. What's important to a client? What is their specific challenge? And as I would say, always have the guts to tell the story through their lens. It could even be something quite simple, like accessing Malaysian fixed income markets through a third party. But it doesn't have to be anything else. But it could be something quite a challenge that one client, or perhaps a few of the same clients might experience. So if it's just telling that one story, then I would say go for it, and stick to that. And it doesn't have to evolve into a massive macro theme if there's if it doesn't lend itself to that. So I think those are the key tips for the future.
No, I think that's really good. So it's like authenticity, consistency, customization. Those are like great tips for our viewers and for our listeners there. And thank you so much, Janet, for your time today. I'm sure our viewers are going to find this information really handy tips, which they can probably take those insights, take that knowledge, see what's working from your perspective, from your company's perspective, and perhaps start implementing some of those key learnings into their organization, and hopefully able to achieve similar success as you have had in your current role, and especially in this current challenging environment. So thank you so much, Janet, again for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you everyone for watching us. To keep yourself up to date, don't forget to log on www.fintechb2bmarketing.com, and we'll come back with another series of the Learning from Marketing Leaders. So stay tuned. Thank you.